Hey, welcome everybody, and um, welcome to the second week online. I wanted to kind of focus in on the uh, the poverty piece this week, and then some of the grants that we write to avoid poverty. But in America, they mentioned the two paths, and this is the American experience. Um, so, restraining power needed to regulate and conduct individuals toward one another, or to prevent the wholesale exploitation of the weak by the strong. That's kind of why we have our checks and balances system going on, and what we do um, see in the American government system for social welfare. That might be a better view for you guys. Um, it even comes from as far back as the Gospels written in the Jesus's time. So three discoveries of poverty. Social gospel says no person can be redeemed and saved alone. God hates injustice, and the kingdom of God is the real solution to poverty and hardship. And so that's great and all, but there needed to be some reforms and progression towards, under the first discovery, we see the progressive era. So, reform in business and politics. The belief was that poverty was a result of the structure of society. It could be fixed by people in the government. Then also, um, after the first discovery, so this is like right around before the Great Depression, which we mentioned before. Um, Shepherd-Towner Act was in 1921. It's a federal program to provide grants to states to develop preventative health services for mothers and children. So it combated the high maternal infant death rates. And I know we've gone through all these, but I wanted to go back through Great Depression and when um, the Federal Reserve was created around this time to have the New Deal and all of the stimulus, which is similar to what we've seen before. Um, the stimulus in the pandemic was a lot of printing of money, which I mentioned was easier to do when there was nobody um, that was able to print money like the Federal Reserve. We had a monetary system backed by silver and gold. Now, the second discovery, so the New Deal era, that was FDR, large amounts of legislation, establishment of new programs. So this is a grant, which I'm getting to. And then in 1960, the key to poverty was thought um, as lack of opportunity. So sometimes we would create programs, many times simple construction programs to make sure everybody had a job. And then there were strategies chosen to deal with poverty that were focused on service opportunities for self-advancement. That's where we had the War on Poverty, Medicare, Medicaid, Voting Rights Act, highway beautification. So as you can see, some of these are different work programs that we would do. Developmental assistance for Appalachia. There's so many grants nowadays. If you go onto grants.gov, you see what we have created. The War on Poverty also included Head Start. It strengthened the legitimacy of early intervention, so that helped mothers and children. Supported the value of daycare, improved nutrition and health care for the young children, then enhanced potential involvement in education. Then in the 70s, we had a bit of inflation starting up again. So inflation means increase of the money supply. And that was the first decade after we took the US off a gold and silver backed currency. So there's the Skirmish Against Poverty, the Supplemental Security Income Program, and that replaced the former state-run old age assistance, aid to the blind, and the aid to the permanently disabled. Title 20 of Social Security Act gave flexibility for states designing social service programs, and the Earned Income Tax Credit gave supplements for working parents. We still have those today. So different legislation, you see aid to family, dependent children. So ADC, it gave aid to needy children without fathers, changed in 1962 to the Aid to Families with Dependent Children, AFDC. And then Family Assistance Plan replaced AFDC. So that's more of what we have today. That is kind of where I'm going with the grant. So more recently at Central State, we wrote grants. If you go on to grants.gov, you can see some of this stuff. At Central, we have several people that run these because we have around $50 million worth of grants. This one that I've recently gotten on alone is $500,000, so $599,000, which half goes to these people to run Office of Sponsored Research Program and research staff. If they don't do their job, we see people have to return federal monies. So Northeastern had to pay $2.7 million for failing to account for research funds. University of Southern Florida had to give back $6 million. Or South Carolina, bad budgets. VSU, and Karen asked me to send this to her, so I'm going to share all of this grant stuff with Karen. Karen Johnson Jordan. She is on our UPP grant, so that's another $100,000 grant from the state that allows us to teach you child and family services, and you can see all the different things that Virginia State had to pay $12 million for improperly spending federal and state funds for the agriculture program. So grants being a large sum of money for a lot of programs in the social welfare state to provide. We all need a mission of social sponsored research and programs. We have several people that help us run it. We're an 1890 land grant institution, so more grants are available at Central State. The administration of funded programs, which we have at Central, helps us. They assist the PI in managing the project and clarify agency regulations. They advise about revisions, like things, when we submit for a grant, they will look it over and say, try this. And they review and approve expenditures once you get the grant. So that's a big deal. For example, the UPP program with Karen, who was just in here, they have to make sure that we go exactly the money that's given for salary. That's $70,000, $18,000 includes like retirement and benefits. We also have other folks that are helping us with preparing the invoice and other bills, and that's why a large budget is given to them. And we challenge, for developing, negotiating, and administering all subcontracts. Those are the people we hire. And sorry, I'm seeing something come through on the grant. Coordinate, close out, and having institutional compliance, and also the process of budget modifications. So these are some of the things that we're doing to aid in the social welfare state. We personally have a good program And Sonia Hunt is helping with this counseling program. So she recently is connecting the Behavioral Health Equity and Inclusion Workforce Development Partnership. And just the work that we do with students that come to her office for counseling. We have added into it a horticulture therapy program. And that is a big deal mainly because what we're doing is making sure that students have different access to therapy. And one of the big things was a shortage on counselors in general. So because of that, we weren't able to serve all 900 students that come to the counseling center at least once a year. So with this grant, we're adding a horticulture therapy program, working with agriculture, building a greenhouse, hiring new counselors, and getting access for students in general. So here is a list of some of the grants, total sum we got every year for the 10 years before the pandemic. So we had 7, 8, 9 million for many years, 5 and 7 million, then 9, 8, and during the pandemic, everything doubled. This is a good example of what the stimulus packages look like. So there's 15 million when our average was 7 million before that. And the money supply doubled. So when you get into the video, I'm going to share it for class. The Federal Reserve System, you can see why we went off of the silver standard. So you can't print gold and silver. So as long as you're on a silver-backed currency, it's hard to give out silver coins and gold coins. So we went away from that in the 60s with the civil rights movement and a lot of the things going on. Population growth was huge. From 45, we only had 2 billion people. In the 60s and 70s, we got up to 3 billion. When I was born in 78, we were at 4 billion. In the 80s, we had 5 billion. By 99, we had 6 billion. 2010, we had 7 billion. And by 2020, we had 8 billion. So increase in the population did kind of demand an increase in the money supply, but not as fast as we've done it. So the folks that watch us over the grants help with effectiveness and efficiency, reliability and reporting, and then compliance. There's a lot of internal controls, uniform guidance. So if you fund a social welfare project, you can see all the different things that go into this. The allowable costs, reasonable costs, allocable costs, and budget requirements and related matters. Like we have to report back to the feds every time. Anytime we spend a penny. So there's several questions. When you are awarded, which we were on beginning this month, so May 15th, the budget setup, they also help us with accounting requirements, the way it goes through, and I'm going to play this slide because it is almost hard to see unless if it is full-sized. So got the PI who reports to both organization manager, department chair, and the Title III director, who then goes to Office of Sponsored Programs and Research to check for like funding allowability and compliance. The dean also runs it through our budget director, then everybody signs. The vice president for enrollment, provost and vice president, vice provost, and then goes through business services to get folks paid. So if there's ever bud mods, you can. It's a budget modification, allows you to transfer rebudget within the same fund number. The bud mod's a sheet that we do to make sure we're in compliance. So as you see, like funding a social welfare state is a lot. There's financial reports, sometimes quarterly or semi-annually. Ours are actually annually. So budget modification, which I may have to submit one today, is a big deal because sometimes things happen. And then as you close a grant, you get to see what's going on with stuff. You make sure you've paid out everyone. You've got strategic position review if you're hiring people. You give improved hiring. And then how you purchase, different auxiliary services. And I almost want to have the person who helps us run this grant come in and speak because she deals with vendors and people that help us with a grant that we're on. And this is real life. So in social work, you're going to document purchases up to 2,000 that require one quote, or up to 5,000, you need a quote that's verbal, 5 to 10,000. And then anything that's 10,000 or more, written quotes, and then justification documentation. And then how you get the contracts approved, because there's, traveling involved. We present at conferences. And I know next week we're presenting on the Racial Equity and Behavioral Health Grant and traveling to Columbus. So we'll have to do pre-conference approval. So with that being said, I wanted to get us on to chapter 6 by the end of the week. I know this is an accelerated summer course, so we're getting through everything as quickly as we can. And make sure you guys know what it would look like to fund the social welfare in the United States. There's a lot of different things that we do. Traveling, reimbursement, and if you do get the Pro Card. So that is some of them. I'm going to start chapter 6, but we will finish it next time. And again, with your first paper, whatever topic you do choose to get into, whether it's food stamps, Federal Reserve policy, different things that we did in the 18 and 1900s that made things challenging. So if your topic on social welfare policy is food stamps, just make sure to have the adequate sources. So there's a lot of scholarly articles. If you choose to write and quote since 2020, you could even do the definition. What is social policy? Social theory and social policy. You could do sources even since as recent as last year and full text. Here's where you would cite them from, and it lets you highlight APA. That way you guys have enough references in your paper. But it's the Federal Reserve System that I wanted to finish with, because we do more of that in chapter 6. Federal Reserve. And there's quite a few monetary policy strategies for the Federal Reserve. There's full text articles, but what and how they do these challenging things to print the money. If you remember your stimulus check in 2020, a lot of us got those both in 2020 and in 2021. And some people used it to save or buy cryptocurrencies or gold and silver, who knows. A lot of people, because it was direct to your account, did freaking DoorDash or improvements on their home or just like shopping in general. So that really stimulated the economy. That helped for a time being, but we're now seeing this inflation in 23 and 24 that's at 6 and 7%, which now has become a focal point of the monetary system right now. So if you did choose to write your paper on that, I would certainly be open to that. There's a lot that we...
En Charmin sabemos que hablar de ir al baño no es muy divertido, pero una canción puede serlo.
So that was the interlude to finishing up. If you had questions, remember we only use assignments, discussions, and announcements in this class because it is just moved recently to online. If you have any questions, feel free to email me, but there's 3 major assignments are the papers and your discussion boards, and we'll be done in about a month and a half. So see you soon.